for any opening remarks he may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The United States has been a long and consistent partner with many African nations. Successful initiatives such as PEPFAR, the President's Malaria Initiative, Feed the Future, and the Millennium Challenge Corporation have already saved millions of lives, created jobs, and spurred economic growth. Just last month, I traveled to Côte d'Ivoire, Rwanda, Tunisia, with Senator Lindsey Graham, where we helped launch the Women's Global Development and Prosperity Initiative. This initiative will provide workforce development and skills training, expand access to capital for entrepreneurs, and remove barriers to women's participation in the economy through microfinancing. Some of the fastest growing economies in the world are in Africa, and it's the fastest growing population as well, with a growing number of middle-class consumers. This means new markets for U.S. companies and new opportunities to partner with the United States. However, countries must have a clear-eyed approach on how this growth is being achieved and who they are partnering with. Between 2000 and 2017, China loaned African countries $143 billion for infrastructure projects. China views Africa's growth as an opportunity for geographic and ideological expansion through their Belt and Road Initiative, which preys on developing nations, leaving them largely in debt traps. The United States must provide a better alternative to China's exploitation. I have met with African governments and ambassadors and business leaders, and they all tell me the same thing, that the U.S. is their preferred partner, but we are just simply not there, as Ambassador Nagy, you and I just discussed prior to the hearing. The United States brings quality, transparency, and partnership, but we must show up to the game to compete. And that's why my bill, the Championing Business Through Diplomacy Act, American business, is so important. I think it helps ensure that the state better supports American companies of all sizes looking to invest in Africa and elsewhere, bringing prosperity and, most importantly, stability. The chairman and I introduced the Global Fragility Act, which I think is a very important bill to help stabilize a destabilized continent, particularly when you look at the Sahel, which the Department of Defense, as Ms. Linehan knows very well, the Sahel is going to be the next hot spot, I think, for, if we can't do the prevention piece right, then we have to send in the military. And I think the Global Fragility Act is a good playbook for the Department of Defense to look at how we can prevent extremism so we don't have to go in and kill. The BUILD Act that Mr. Yoho introduced is a profound, significant piece of legislation that will put OPIC on steroids, and I think economic investment and an opportunity from the private sector. In line with my legislation, I applaud the administration for their work on Prosper Africa to increase two-way trade with African countries. The United States also plays an important role supporting good governance and democratic values on the continent. We must continue working with countries to combat corruption and respect human rights. In Ethiopia, we've seen a historic transition, and I commend the bold reforms by Prime Minister Abiy. In Sudan, the people have risked their lives to call for a civilian-led government, an end to Omar al-Bashir's brutal regime. The U.S. must stand by the people of Sudan during this critical moment in their history. I know very well from my time as chairman of Homeland Security that ungoverned and unstable places become safe havens for terrorists to regroup and plan attacks and external operations. I'm deeply disturbed by the number of increasing attacks targeting innocent civilians, including women and children. The United States must continue to stand with our African partners in the fight against radical Islamist terrorism. And that is why proactive investments in security and development now will make the United States far safer in the long run. I'm also concerned that the proposed reduction in U.S. special forces and advisors in the Sahel is premature. My bill, the Trans-Sahara Counterterrorism Partnership Act, calls for an interagency approach to address these threats. I think these witnesses today have valuable insight into these challenges facing Africa. It brings together, state, USAID, and defense, which is what our Global Fragility Act bill actually does, in a interagency, whole-of-government approach to address this challenge that we have. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. McCaul. Our witnesses this morning are Tibor P. Naj, Jr., Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Ramsey Day, USAID, Senior Deputy Assistant Administrator for Africa, and Michelle Lenahan, Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for African Affairs. Once again, let me welcome you all and convey the thanks of the committee. I'll now recognize you each for 5 minutes to summarize your testimony. Let's start with Assistant Secretary Naj. I hope I didn't mess up the last name too much.
Perfect, sir. Perfect. Thank you very much. Good morning, Chairman Engel, Ranking Member McCaul, members of the committee. I am pleased to be joined here today by my colleagues from USAID and the Department of Defense. Our engagement across Africa is truly a team effort. I would also like to recognize the men, women, and families currently serving the American people across our missions in Africa and within our offices in Washington. I am grateful to represent such a dedicated and talented group of public servants. When speaking to audiences, be they Americans or Africans, I often tell them that the best way to view Africa is through the windshield, not the rearview mirror. It is certainly a time of challenges and opportunities in Africa, and I look forward to sharing with you what we at the State Department are doing to advance U.S.-Africa foreign policy priorities. I spent the vast majority of my 32-year diplomatic career in Africa with postings in 7 different countries, and I fell in love with the continent and its people. Since I assumed my current role last September, I have visited Africa 3 times with another trip planned next month. During my trips, I have engaged with government officials, business leaders, civil society, and average citizens in order to better understand each country and sub-region through a broad range of people and perspectives. As I said before this committee last December, the potential for increased engagement with Africa economically, culturally, and diplomatically is truly limitless. I am a firm believer that with every challenge there is opportunity, and we must capitalize on our successes. We have seen significant positive signs in numerous areas that are important to recognize. Prime Minister Abiy in Ethiopia continues to impress and inspire with his leadership, and we have seen progress in our relationship with Eritrea. President Lourenço of Angola has demonstrated a commitment to fight corruption and to foster citizen-responsive governance and dialogue that can and should be replicated elsewhere. Just 6 months ago, discussions about the Democratic Republic of Congo revolved around how to promote the will of the Congolese people in the face of a government trying to cling to power through unconstitutional means. By contrast, when Secretary Pompeo recently met with President Tshisekedi of the DRC following the historic transfer of power, the new president's priorities were fighting corruption, strengthening governance, advancing human rights, and combating trafficking in persons. And we continue to watch the dramatic events unfold in Sudan, where for the first time in 30 years, a transition led by civilians representing the diversity of Sudanese society seems possible. To underscore the U.S. commitment to Africa, the administration announced a new Africa strategy in December 2018 to recalibrate our engagement with the continent. This strategy seeks to promote trade and commercial ties, to increase prosperity in the United States and in African countries, counter radical Islamic terrorism and violent conflict, strengthen efforts to advance peace and security by prioritizing resources and promoting effective and efficient peacekeeping operations, and by supporting stability, democracy, good governance, and self-reliance. Ultimately, the success of this strategy will build on our strong relationships with individual countries, effective regional organizations,